Hello, Fruitport High School chemistry students. Welcome to today's lesson. Yesterday we talked about the atom and the subatomic particles, and for today to be successful might benefit you to know a little bit about ions and isotopes. We'll cover this much more in depth in class, but here's a little start to help you be successful on that chem quest, okay? So what is an isotope? We need to know this. An isotope is when you have atoms of the same element that don't have the same mass. Typically, every atom of nitrogen, for instance, weighs the same, but not every single one is, okay? And why is that? It's because, well, sometimes you have a few extra neutrons or a few less neutrons. And remember, neutrons have a mass of 1 and changes the mass of the isotope. Okay, so isotopes, same element, different mass. Okay, in middle school, sometimes teachers will say, or I don't say middle school, let's not blame them, but some teachers will say something wrong and say when the number of protons does not match the number of neutrons, and that is incorrect. So isotopes are not when the number of protons and the number of neutrons don't match. You can definitely be an isotope if you have 6 protons and 6 neutrons. You could also be an isotope if you have 6 protons and 8 neutrons. Okay, so just watch out for that if you were ever misled. Okay, you might want to ask yourself this question that's in the bottom corner. What's the same and what's different between isotopes of atoms? If you can answer that question, what are like 2 similarities and 2 differences, then you know. We'll go over that in class, okay? So watch out for isotopes in the Chem Quest. Here are 3 pictures of isotopes. They're all hydrogen. They're all have 1 proton. The orange dot represents 1 proton. So they're all the same elements. But the green dots represent neutrons. Some hydrogens have 0 neutrons. Some have 1 neutron, some have 2 neutrons. And you can see this number up in the upper left corner of the hydrogen is the mass. But they're all hydrogen. So they all are the same element, hydrogen, but they have different masses. And that is how we tell, that's the definition of an isotope. Okay. The second word is ions. And ions are typically just atoms with a charge. Atoms, by definition, are neutral. If an atom is not neutral, we don't call it an atom anymore. We call it an ion. And that's because the number of protons and the number of electrons, though typically the same, that's not always the case. You can have a few extra electrons or a few electrons compared to what's considered a normal atom. Atoms gain and lose electrons all the time. Really warning, atoms can never gain or lose protons. They're stuck in the nucleus in the middle. The outer electrons can sometimes be removed or some extra ones added in, okay? So what we'll do if we ever want to write down the charge, we will put the symbol for the element, and in the superscript in the upper right corner, we'll put the charge. So here's calcium with the +2 charged ion. You could put +2 or 2 positive. It doesn't matter. Same thing with sulfur. Here's sulfur with a -2. You could put -2 or 2 negative. Both are acceptable. You might see like down at the bottom here, you have a K with a plus with no number. It's typical in chemistry class. If you mean 1, you leave it blank. Understood it means 1. So that would be a K with a +1, potassium +1. And this other one we won't talk about since it's not fitting on the screen, okay? And really quickly, a couple of vocab words. A positive ion is called a cation, and a negative ion is called an anion. I like to remember that the T looks like a little bit like a positive at the top. And so that's how I remember that the T cations are positive. And anions, you can remember they're negative because they stand for a negative ion, okay? And we'll talk more about the bottom of the slide later, okay? For your rest of your work today for at home, as I want you to work on that packet called the Chem Quest. I want you to work on it for 45 minutes, get as much done. I suggest you do it in pencil so we can fix anything that needs to be fixed. It's not going to be due Thursday, but you're definitely going to have to show me part of it is done when I see you in class next Thursday or Friday. And at some point, you will turn in the whole thing. Remember that ChemQuest is meant for you to be able to answer the questions by teaching yourself. So if you find it to be challenging, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. All right. Okay, good job, everyone.